Hello, this is Julie
And this is Nick.
with Toad Town, and this is week 2 of having Red Ranger chickens. So, new things this week. We, as you can see, put in a second feeder here. So, that's the feeder on the back end of the chicken tractor. It kind of looks a little bit like the waterer now. And speaking of waterers, we have a new waterer that Nick made.
Yeah, this water is from a food grade bucket that we got for free at our local grocery store with 4 poultry watering nipples screwed in there.
The chicks are, as you can see, getting a few more feathers coming in, so both their flight feathers and then their contour or body feathers are starting to come in. So they're beginning to be able to regulate their body temperature a little bit more, which means we've been raising the heat lamp and providing them gradually less and less heat over time. So they can eventually be very used to what is currently our outside temperatures, which by the time we put them outside, we're hoping to have temperatures in the 70s and lows in the evenings around the 50s. So, and that's been happening a few days on and off, but not consistently.
We started to notice that the bigger chicks especially were starting to kind of face each other off and make their pecking order. We've kind of been calling it sparring. And even though this is mostly normal behavior, we didn't want it to become too much, so we decided to increase their space quite a bit actually. This is now about 2/3 of the full chicken tractor. We were also noticing them kind of running back and forth a bit more, so they seem a lot more happy with the extra room.
Yeah, and as you might have noticed, they are still continuing to run, flap and run, and just generally have on and off zoomies. So we figured providing them the extra space wouldn't hurt. And as I said, they are getting a few more feathers. They now have more capacity to retain their body heat, so they don't have to be underneath the heat lamps or near them all the time. That extra space isn't detrimental to them being able to keep warm. So our goal is to ultimately consume these chickens. So understandably, we did not plan to name any of them. However, we have inadvertently named 2 of them, mostly because of 2 issues that have come up. One, at the end of the week 1, we noticed that there was a chick that had pasty butt. So, and it seemed to be, we caught it just at the right time and we're able to manage it, get the feces off the rear end and get the chick up and running again and pooping successfully.
We were a little concerned with the chick once we put it back in though, because we did use some warm water to wash the area, and the other chicks started kind of pecking at him because his feathers were wet.
Yep, because the feathers were wet, and also because I think there was still a little bit of poop stuck on his feathers, and that was just an unusual thing, and they seem to like to peck at unusual things. So yes, we were definitely a little bit worried about that chick. However, I think he fully recovered, and we haven't exactly kept track of which one that was, but we suspect it is the smallest of the group. So we named him or her the runt, just because he or she is obviously about half the size of the other chicks.
Hey, either that bird was stunted in growth because of the pasty butt, and or it might just have some poor genetics compared to the others.
The second chick we ended up inadvertently naming, we noticed at the beginning of this week that it had some eye issues just going on with its one right eye, and it was watering, it was itching, So it was obviously rubbing the eye against its shoulder and causing some slight feather clumping on its shoulder. And we did take it out and try and clean up the eye a little bit. We suspect that because it's one of the larger chicks, that it might have got into a fight and just somehow injured the eye. We looked it up a little bit on the internet, and it seems like most eye problems tend to occur in both eyes, not just the one. But this chick ended up, it's still somewhat prevalent, and it makes his face look slightly scarred just because of the wateriness, so we named him Two Face.
So far, it seems that chick is doing better. We did pull him out the second day as well and try and clean up some of the kind of scabby feathered clumps around the eye. Those feathers seem to have not grown in anymore, so he's still quite noticeable.
And the good thing about both Two Face and the Runt is they're both eating, drinking, acting perfectly normal chicks. So they aren't just sitting around lethargic, and that is one reason we haven't been too worried about them. So a few things, a few kind of observations as we've been watching the chicks this week. They do this weird leg wing stretch where they'll be like at the feeder just kind of walking around, and they'll stretch out both their leg and their wing. I'm not sure if it's just because they're just growing fast and need to kind of continuously stretch. Didn't expect that.
We've also noticed the chicks are scratching at the pine shavings more, and they might be eating some of the small bits of pine shavings that are broken off, which is something we debated in the beginning about whether to get flake or fine grade pine shavings, which are available at our Tractor Supply. I tried looking at it online, and it seemed like most people went towards the flake, which is more coarse but not quite as absorbent as the fine. But I think we're pretty happy with that choice. Otherwise, there's a higher potential of the chicks eating too much of the pine material.
And this week, they were much more curious about the camera when I put it in to film them. I actually had to remove quite a bit of footage because several of them ganged up on the camera and started pecking it, which didn't make for the most pleasant audio experience. They are a lot more curious about it than last week, where they pretty much just went around ignoring it for the most part. Some of them came up close and looked at it because of the red flashing light.
We also did try taking the top off of the trench feeder, the flip top feeder, and they really seemed a lot more interested in the food. We're not trying to push them to eat, but the downside was they were kind of spilling it and stepping in it and pooping in it. So we ended up putting it back on. We may take it off in the future, but so far they're starting to eat a bit more and starting to drink a bit more.
Yeah, so that's it for week 2 of our Red Ranger chickens.
Thanks for watching.